and welcome to day one of our live streaming coverage from RSAC Conference 2025. I'm Jameson Cush with Informa Tech Target and Eye on Tech. This week, 40,000 plus cybersecurity professionals, practitioners, experts, vendors, even a few celebrities and maybe even a few hackers will be descending upon the Moscone for what many consider to be the largest cybersecurity focused event in the world. I am not alone, sitting at this desk in Broadcast Alley. Joining me for the festivities and to share in the hosting duties is a minor celebrity in her own right, as well as an expert in all things business technology, Jen English.
Hello, thank you. I'm so excited to be here, my first time at RSAC, and I am looking forward to all of it. So
last year, Jen, AI was all over the place. That was the big topic. This year, what are you thinking? Are we going to see more AI?
I think that's an obvious yes. Yeah, I'm excited to see how the developments have gone, have a little bit more use cases with it, so really what are the implications of those for enterprises and for organizations of, what does this mean for us and for companies. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, AI at the show, AI at the desk here, because yes. Our first guest, I'll introduce her, it's Sian John, the Chief Technology Officer at NCC Group. Sian, thank you. Today you're here to talk about making cybersecurity and AI sustainable.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's sort of like the AI, it's always the 1A topic is always the new features and products, but that sustainability angle, it's always the 1B story. And I'm guessing we need to elevate that and talk about that more. So maybe, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because I'm looking, you've worked for governments, security providers, so tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, so I'm quite old, so I've been around for a while, so I think just over 30 years in IT definitely for now. So yeah, I started off working in the UK education and then went into the Houses of Parliament, supporting the Parliament, supporting democracy, I suppose you could say, really, isn't it? And then from there, got into cybersecurity while I was there, and then worked at large American vendors, Symantec and Microsoft for nearly 20 years, and then now back with a British company, NCC Group, which actually has a really long history, because we were founded out of the UK National Computing Centre literally 25 years ago this year, and that was founded in terms of in the 60s when everyone talked about technology and the white heat of technology. They set up the National Computing Centre, that became NCC Group, and there we are now, still at the edge, very much focused on how we can secure technology. So yeah, for me, I've had a very lucky career to get to me where I am today. So
great. So you started out with cybersecurity.
I started out with IT.
Okay, with IT.
Everyone of my age, no one of my age started in cyber.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
As we are older.
Made your way to cybersecurity, yeah. And now we have AI here. Obviously, yeah. There's a lot of implications, like I said, a lot of benefits, but with that, there are also some challenges. So can you speak a little bit about what those challenges are, especially when it comes to our environment?
Yeah, so obviously being at RSAC, we're going to talk about the fact that there's security challenges, which everyone are talking about in terms of data security. But in terms of the environment, if you look at training a model, the amount of power that uses, it's astronomically more than a sort of standard computing environment. In fact, you can almost look at like the Moore's law of computation, and it gets up to a certain level, and everyone says, right now it's hit a plateau now. And then along comes the AI models and the large language models in particular, and then that carries on and going up. So effectively, you've got that increase in compute, and it's almost like if you look at the challenge then with keeping things cool and keeping them working, it's like I am old enough to remember when you went around data centers and there'd be the old swimming pool that was emptied, because that's what they used to cool the mainframes in the 60s and 70s. They didn't need it anymore. And now we're at the point where actually we're back to needing it again, because we've effectively brought that same compute back. And now it's obviously doing a lot more than a 70s mainframe. But the reality is, it's always good to look at the exciting bit of the technology, but you also need to look at the risks and the threats that come with that, which include cyber and sustainability as well. And it's almost like we need to look for how do we make things secure by design and green by design at the same time, yeah. Same way.
And one area I want to make sure we touch on early is machine learning, because that is tied into AI pretty closely. So can you discuss the sort of use cases there between machine learning and AI?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously there's the old joke, what's the difference between AI and machine learning? is that machine learning exists in Python and AI exists in PowerPoint. So, but in reality, obviously, I mean, machine learning, particularly in cyber, has been around for 15, 20 years. I mean, being even at Symantec, I think it's since 2010, you've not been able to buy an endpoint security software that did not have machine learning built in, because I remember at that point you were talking like 1 million variants every day, and a signature-based system couldn't keep up with that. You'd gone from 5 in the year 2000 to 1 million in 2010. And so literally, you've got to have machine learning to look for the signatures. So yeah, we talk about now cyber needs to use AI and machine learning, but really it's probably one of the longest, financial services and cyber been using it for the longest. And it means we've also got that experience of adversarial machine learning, because once you're trying to defend a system with machine learning, the attackers are trying to break it, and you've got that whole ongoing war. So it's actually quite mature. And some of that can be extremely advanced, and some of it can just be very, very, fancy scripts and algorithms. So in a way, when we talk about AI, it almost goes all the way from what is basically a script, not really intelligent at all, an automation script, through, machine learning and automation up into that. And I think when you're getting into AI, it's more that bit where you want to talk to it like a human being. So it is more the large language models, although they're not intelligent. But I suppose AI now, we need to think of it as that whole family, don't we, really? Large language models, generative AI, machine learning, and then some stuff that you call AI, which is really just an automation script. Yeah.
So you have these enterprises who want to use AI. They are building their own LLMs. They're putting everything into there. But that comes at the risk of using compute power and all of those costs and energy costs. So what do you advise to enterprises who are trying these out? Do you look for a specific use case or something else?
100%, absolutely. I think it's something like 70% of all the generative AI large language projects have failed because people weren't sure what they wanted to do with them. So let's go out and do it. It hasn't worked. And then I think we're probably going through, the trough of despair on generative AI at the moment. But that's not its fault. It's because people have been trying to use it for things it wasn't used for. It's like that whole, board CEO directive of, let's use AI. We need to use AI as a difference. What for? I don't know, just need to use it as a difference. Whereas actually where it can make a difference is when you're very specific about the use case, very specific about what you want it to do, and then you work around that. Also, that's the way to be more efficient rather than having larger, broader, models that are just trying to do everything. Because the less specific you are, the more you've got to train it, the more power it uses. So I think it is around use cases. I think that's also where you're seeing that rise of agentic AI now as well, because it means you can have very specific use cases and you bring them all together up into a system of use rather than having to have one big behemoth model. And we've all been there. Even forget the word AI, the one big behemoth database or data lake soon becomes a mess, and you're not actually sure what you're trying to achieve with it. Particularly in my government background, government IT projects that are large. In the UK anyway, I don't know about anywhere else in the world, tend to have problems.
Is there an inherent conflict there, though, between the sort of the high-level executive shouting, we need more AI, run these models, and then the cost and sustainability sort of clashing?
Yes, 100%, yeah. And that becomes just like with everything else. So you've got to manage that conversation with the executive. So it's like, yes, we want to use AI, but let's make sure that we're using it in a way that will actually add to our business, because otherwise you are just burning cash for something you don't need to do. So ironically, as the CTO, almost part of my job is to slow us down and go, what are the key use cases that we need to do? There's also the fact that, as with anything that's a digital transformation, if you do too much of it and you haven't controlled it, where do you put the security controls on it and don't end up with an embarrassment or environment? I mean, if you look at a lot of the large language models getting rolled out, they're getting rolled out across environments where for years people haven't really done data security well, and suddenly you're training a large language model in it, it's answering on things. The only reason there was protection was there was obscurity, and now you've got this large language model suddenly talking about the secret stuff, and everyone's going, hey. But if you'd have actually been more specific about what you wanted to do, make sure you've got the right use case in place, and that's working. And actually also, before you go off and build your own, is there another one that's already been built that you could tailor? Because from a route to productivity, that's easier, but but also from a sustainability point of view, because you've already got the major training, you're then doing the refinement to your use case. Yeah.
So for security teams or enterprises, like they want to build these security use cases for AI.
Yeah.
What are some of what do those look like? Red teaming or anything else like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, for us at NC Group, we've got like 3 tiers to our strategy for AI. So one is security services for AI. And I like to say we've got the best red team in the world. I go, well, probably the best red team in the world, but really good red teaming and testing environments, and also very, very strong risk management and risk audit. So we're really going out there helping our customers design the risk management program, do red teaming, do testing for it. The other one is like, how can we use AI for our security services? So we've done some research out of our Spanish team, which looking at deep fakes and phishing, and voice phishing and video phishing, and effectively then using that as part of our red team to impersonate people and help us to get even further into an organization for testing, because you know what, we are there acting like the attacker, and that's what the attacker will be doing. And then the third strand is, how do we use AI for ourselves? And that's as boring as, can we get our proposals better with the proposal generator, which is not boring, it's absolutely exciting and important. But it's like, you think, well, is it a really advanced use case? Well, actually, no. But it's like, don't use it for just creating a template, use it for things like, have you answered the question? Yeah, can you go across all the different templates that we've got and service descriptions and help to answer this question? To say, so it's all about consistency and quality and productivity. But the key thing with all those sort of use cases is making sure you're building it in to support the human, not replace them.
Right.
And don't automatically use AI when a search will do or something like that.
Yep.
So with all those use cases, the cost of AI is increasing, the carbon footprint goes up. What sort of practical steps can companies take to offset that or reduce that?
Yeah, that's the emerging, it's something I've been talking about for a year or 2 years, and I was originally due to do this presentation with someone from Microsoft. They were able to make it, but it's literally looking at how you create that sustainability, and we're not quite there yet. We're getting there. I think it's only really I think I've been talking about it for about 2 years, and I think it's the last year that you've seen more and more people starting to talk about it, because, oh look, it's new and exciting, and then people start to see their electricity bills and go, ouch. So there's a lot going on. Key thing is it generates a lot of heat, so going back to those swimming pools, almost like bring those back. In the UK, the Advanced Computing Facility for Academia sits in Edinburgh University, and they've been doing part of their research is actually not just to use the stuff, but also to do things like, say someone needs to do an analysis of a biogenome, and I may get the science wrong, whatever it might be, that's a very deep analytical model they need to run, but do they need it like tomorrow, or could you so basically they've been dropping the clock speed deliberately. So instead of taking, 72 hours, it'll take 96 hours, but that will save something like 15 gigawatts of power. And so it's that sort of thing. Or if I'm generating heat, can I heat the entire campus out of the heat that's generated from that facility? Or even actually, there's a flooded mine near Edinburgh, putting the heat into the flooded mine, and then if you've got houses nearby and everyone's trying to go to heat pumps, and we're not that warm in the UK, so heat pumps is a bit of a challenge. So it's like, if I could put the heat into there, then I can actually power a housing estate out of it. But there are things like, slowing down how long you need the result. Do you need it back quickly? Doing wide and shallow rather than deep, recursive models, because the more deep you go, the more processing power you need. So it's looking at how you optimize the model. And again, there's a lot of work happening at places like Microsoft and Google, but also in academia in terms of how do we design these models to be more efficient. It's one of those things where lots of power is available, so everyone does it easily and quickly and don't care about how much power it uses, and then you go, well, actually we need to think about how do we optimize the way this works. And there's things like spatial shifting, moving the compute to where there's less power in demand at the time shifting, doing the computing at times when there's not other things going on, and like I say, slowing down and optimizing the way models work. I just don't think necessarily a lot of the early models were that optimized, and I think that's where we need to focus now.
Can we still say please and thank you in our prompts?
Well, I suppose they're not, aren't we? I know from the power point of view, but I'm British.
Yeah,
it's quite hard. I say sorry for walking down the road.
So much.
Yeah, please and thank you all the time. So I know we're not supposed to, and so you could say don't say please and thank you, or maybe that's I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with prompt firewalls, but maybe that's a prompt firewall. So when you get please and thank you, don't pass that off to the model. Just go, have an automatic response that says, okay. So rather than asking, because if you've got something that you're making appear like a human being, then we as human beings are going to interact with it. And we've all been brought up to say, well, definitely in my country, but you'd say please and thank you all the time. And I'm pretty sure everywhere it's all about being polite. So it's quite hard to say, don't say it. And I know there's that whole joke going around, if I say please and thank you now, when the robot overlords take over, I'll be all right, isn't it? But yeah, there is that thing where you try and change human behaviour, but it's almost like the same with security. Change human behaviour, but maybe put the technical underlaying underneath. So if you don't want please and thank you, don't accept please and thank you, or have a standard response that doesn't need to go through the model.
Well, with such an emerging technology, it does seem we are so far from having best practices or a standard set of best practices aligned with its proper use. And I guess how would a company even have, how do they have visibility into the costs of their AI and the impact that they're having?
I mean, that's really got to be looking at the compute. So obviously, talking with Microsoft and things like that, you've got the cost control in the cloud provision. So it's almost like, and the pilots we're doing with AI for ourselves in the cloud world is actually, for me, it's not just about how do we use it to work, it's like how do I put the guardrails in place, how from a security perspective, but also understanding what the cost modeling is, and then making sure that I have a particular billing profile that says, this is how much you could spend, and then so obviously we've got the ones we've got in control of, but if you want to then give it to our consultants, we've got some very smart people. I mean, a lot of them do it on their own compute at the moment, so there's a limit to how much they can do. But if you want to give them cloud compute, then, you know, how much have you got to spend, put some billing limits on it, put some controls on there, and then also having that optimization and review of how efficient it is in terms of cost control. I think it's that key thing of actually having to design it as we go. And the thing is, we've always gone, oh, I don't really need to care about it, but it is, you know, this is how much you think, and not even if I say not everything needs to be done in a large language model, but also not everything needs to be done by the latest and greatest large language model. So if it's a really simple query, you could probably put it through GPT-2. You don't need GPT-4 or 4.5, whatever it is. And it's that temptation to always use the latest and greatest. And it goes back to your point of the use case. What am I trying to do with this? Does this need advanced large language model? Is this a little machine learning? Or is this something I could just write a script to do and I don't actually need to get AI to do it? If it's like a routine automation that you do, sometimes you need some reasoning in that. So, you know, an AI model is useful, and sometimes it is just a straightforward workflow, in which case you just put it through a workflow. You don't need to go to the model. I think that's where, as with all these things, it becomes hard because it's not just simple. It's like there's a whole different rule book and working out of what matters. I think we're seeing a lot of stuff come, particularly from the cloud providers who are very invested in us not spending a lot of money on that, on how to optimize use case. So I think there's some great stuff coming from AWS, Google, and Microsoft on that. And it's almost like, learn from them and think about how to do it. And I'm always like, just because I can, should I? Is this actually the right way to do it?
So stepping back even further from the cloud providers and the vendors, what can the security industry as a whole do to really help this conversation about, okay, resource consumption with cybersecurity?
So if I look at security and big data over the last, 15, 20 years, it's almost very interesting because the big data things go through, make a decision and go backwards, and then security follows along behind. So I think it's like Dave McCrory at VMware talked about data gravity in 2010, and if you bring all the data together into one place, then you get a latency and a throughput issue, so let's leave it where it is and go query it there. And then security came along and said, I want one big data lake, which soon became a data swamp because it was like a mess. And then everyone's trying to search in it and you can't find anything, but being security people were like, well, I might need that at some point, so I've got to keep it. And then gradually data gravity is beginning to filter through that. That's my concern with AI, is that if we say everyone in AI is now going, oh, we got these models and then they're beginning to burn the planet down, how do we be optimized? That in security we're coming along behind and not doing the same thing. So the the same principle applies. If you're thinking about threat hunting, there's some really good use cases for generative reasoning in that, but there's also some things that can just be automated workflows. So I think the same thing applies in terms of, thinking about how, yes, everything needs to be secure, you need to be secure by design, you need to build it to help with security, but how do I do that in a green and sustainable way? I think I'm probably barking up a bad tree, that's a bad analogy, in the hope that we won't do what we've always done and be like 2 years behind the rest of the industry. Unfortunately, it looks like we are doing what we've always done and we're like 2 years behind. But in a way, I suppose you've got to wait for the people that do data analytics and data analysis and AI to work out how to optimize it. And then we in cybersecurity then need to be thinking, how can I learn from that and how can I build that in? So I think, yeah, that's the challenge for cyber. But we've also got the same thing, of course, that if you're going to do all this, a lot of this relies on renewable energy, a lot of this relies on connectivity, which actually, ironically, increases the need for cyber, because renewable energy is all about connected smart grids and connected systems and knowing what you're doing. And suddenly you've got lots of small organizations that then need, it makes us, that's the other side that makes us very busy related to AI. It's got nothing to do with AI. It's going out and helping to secure the OT in a lot of small organizations, because the difference between a renewable and a big oil and gas company is renewable energy tends to be lots of small companies that are all trying to do things. So for cyber, it's ironically we're both the problem and the solution at the same time.
So it's a perfect topic for RSAC conference.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So the last question I guess I'm asking everybody, what sort of things do you expect to see or would you like to see at the conference as we kick off?
Yeah, so I mean, I am here looking on a theme really, so looking if there's anyone doing anything really innovative with automation along that lines of things that are really going to help move the dial, particularly in things like security operations and detection, but also in terms of automating the way that we do security, but maybe doing it in an efficient way, obviously, for me. And then the other bit that's really of interest that I'm always looking for and always sometimes happy and sometimes disappointed in is actually doing data governance and data security properly. I mean, I think 30 years in this industry and we've never really quite done it properly. We've done DLP as a sticking plaster, and firewalls are now the sticking plaster for that in the AI world. It's like anyone who's doing something interesting with data governance, I think that is actually the killer cybersecurity generative AI reasoning model, is actually work out which bits of my data actually matter to me, because people apparently find that quite hard. So again, looking for people doing something innovative in that space. Great.
Excellent. Is there anything else before we cut loose?
No, just a pleasure. And the other thing is just walking around 40,000 people to see and learn and hear from. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank
Celebrities later, Jamie Foxx.
Yes. Oh yeah, I forgot Jamie Foxx. Yeah, I forgot to that.
Okay, well, Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. So I'm Jameson Cush, and for Jen English, thank you so much for joining us. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned. We'll be broadcasting all week here from Broadcast Alley at RSAC Conference 2025.
Got it.